Hi, I'm here with William J. Martin, AIA, or I'm going to call him Bill, not because he's not Prince William, his wife said, but
I am no prince.
you're no prince. That's
My
not
wife
true.
reminds me every day.
Oh, that's not true. Bill Martin grew up in northern New Jersey, just outside New York City. He attended Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, where he studied architecture and, for a time, managerial economics. Oh. He then returned to the New York area and completed his study of architecture at Pratt Institute in New York City, receiving his degree in 1988. Bill is licensed in 5 states as an architect and is also a licensed professional community planner in New Jersey. He is also a licensed New York construction official and building inspector. With over 38 years in this field, Bill has been in private practice for 29 years. He has been involved in the design of many building types, from consulting on hospital projects to designing office warehouse distribution centers, malls, and shopping centers. Bill now focuses on historic preservation and high-performance single-family home configuration with integration of sustainable and resilient features. His projects are sustainable both economically and environmentally. Bill is a certified LEED AP home design professional and was the recipient of a 2011 AIA New Jersey Committee on the Environment Top 10 Project Merit Award. Bill is currently co-chairman of the AIA New Jersey Public Awareness Committee and engages frequently with the press and on social media. Bill has been on Fox News, CNBC, and MSNBC discussing preservation issues, trends in design, and sustainability, which I think I've seen some of those. I think you've posted them on Facebook before. Have you not? Okay. Yes. So we can, I'm sure, do you have them on your website?
I have links to my website. I think all the links are still active. Some of those interviews are a little old now.
Okay.
But I've been on various TV shows over the years.
Mm-hmm.
The Today Show. I was interviewed by somebody from the Today Show. I kind of lost track of them.
Yeah. So what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
The first time I remember becoming aware of architecture was when I was 6 years old. I grew up in Gloucester, New Jersey, which is a small town in Bergen County, right up near New York City, and in a split-level home. And my father was an aircraft mechanic that worked at JFK. He was absolutely brilliant with machinery, not so great with carpentry. He loved to do everything himself. I mean, he could fix a 747 with a toothpick, but when it came to carpentry, it just wasn't great. So, but I was 6 years old. What did I know? So he comes home one day with my grandfather's Sawzall, and he says, "I'm going to take the archway out between the dining room and the living room." Now, it's not a big house, you know. So they wanted the ceiling to run straight through. So I'm a kid, and he says, "Oh, you're going to help me. I'm going to be the helper." So I'm looking at this stuff, and I'm watching him. He goes zip up one side of the archway with the Sawzall all the way to the ceiling, and then goes to the other side. He drops the archway, and the archway was there because there was a supporting beam. I'm totally serious. So the beam drops, and he's patching away. You know, wood framing is forgiving at first.
Yeah. Sometimes things are just sticking together
So my mother walks in and says,
by paint.
The ceiling is sagging, you know. And sure enough, it was. He dropped the main beam, and so what he did was he ended up going up into the attic space above. There was a roof area above that, and that's why it was so forgiving. It didn't fall in.
Yeah.
And he trussed up the rafters to the ceiling joists to support that connection point between the two ceiling joists, but he trussed it up in the wrong direction. I didn't know this until later on when I became an architect, and I said, go up and see the truss work. He trussed it in the wrong direction. But it managed to hold together anyway. But at 6 years old, this fascinated me because it was the first time that I realized that there was stuff inside the walls. Prior to that, my perception of space and walls and houses was that the walls were like super thin and there was nothing in there, but once he cut through it, I could see what was going on inside. I was absolutely fascinated by this. And I retained that interest for a long time. And then as I grew up with Legos and all this other stuff, I had always thought that I might want to be an architect someday from the time I was 6 years old because of that incident.
Mm-hmm.
But it still amuses me now to tell that story. And it's a true story. But my father was absolutely brilliant with machinery. He had all kinds of security clearances. He worked on all the airplanes for all world leaders when they came into JFK for conferences. He would walk on the planes and there would be politicians and movie stars and all kinds of stuff. And he used to tell us about some of that, but brilliant with machinery, but really bad with framing and wood carpentry and things like that.
We have a friend that's actually an airplane mechanic for Southwest, and I didn't say that. I didn't say that yesterday when Jeff and I were talking about the Southwest, because he's doing the build the brand thing, and it's based on Southwest. But he's been an aircraft mechanic for other companies too. But he's been with Southwest for probably, I don't know, maybe over 20 years now. But it's always funny when we people will meet him and he's not the happiest person, and we'll always say what do you think he does? And people are like, oh, I don't know what he does. And I'm like, oh, he's a jet mechanic, and they're like always like, oh my God.
Think about that next time you're sitting on the runway.
I know, but I have total confidence. That because he is very much into, he definitely knows what's going on with everything, but it's just
they're highly trained.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And they go to jet school once a year to learn the new technology and the changes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
A lot of stuff that they had to know.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, especially if we grew up in an area where we had older houses. Marilyn and I are kind of laughing about all these, these houses that people live. It is almost when you lived in a house where you did have these parents that were kind of doing these projects all the time, which of course with an old house, right? My house is like 1953, but things are still falling apart because 1953 now is a really old house. Not as old as the one that I grew up in Dormont. That one was really old, but that was the one where the plaster ceilings, would start to fall down, right? And then when it falls down on the second floor, then it eventually falls down on the first floor also. But the house was big enough that we would just shut off that room and we just wouldn't go into it. And then finally, when my father was able to fix it or whatever, then we could move back into that room again, which might be good for the situation that we're in now, as far as those traditional spaces and old sliding doors and, blocking off certain areas, and then opening them up again. But what are 3 classic buildings that you like and why?
Okay. This is a good question.
Thank you.
It really is. I have three constructions in particular that I was always fascinated with, especially when I started to study architectural history. The first one is the Red Pyramid in Egypt, which is not part of the Giza Plateau.
Okay.
The second one, of course, is the Parthenon. In Athens, and the last was the Empire State Building, and for different reasons. The Red Pyramid fascinated me because it was the first true pyramid that the Egyptians were able to construct.
Okay.
And it preceded the Giza pyramids. And part of the problem the Egyptians were having was that as they were building these pyramids, they were having problems. Sometimes they would collapse because of the weight and because of the lack of proper foundations. So as their understanding of pyramids advanced, they started to do things like, they're building multiple pyramids and one of them collapses because they there's something wrong with the engineering of what they're doing. And that's when you see things like the bent pyramid, where it comes up steep and then it shallows out, because they recognized that if they kept going at that angle, it was going to collapse like the other ones.
Oh, okay.
But the reason why the red pyramid fascinated me was because it made me realize that the Egyptians were in fact building models and were testing new engineering ideas. And that was never really made clear in the history. You're studying architecture, you study the forms, you study a little bit about society, because it's the architecture's reflection of the society.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me realize that because the angle of the red pyramid is 43.5 degrees. So if you take sand, which there's plenty of sand in Egypt, a lot of people don't know that, and you pour it, like going through an hourglass, into a single point, it forms a cone. And just under its own weight and its own pressure, and the crystals of sand are like tiny blocks of stone, it forms a cone with an angle of 43.5 degrees. So they must have modeled that, realized that that was the optimum angle to prevent a pyramid from collapsing, and then they constructed the red pyramid. The red pyramid has chambers inside of it too, just like the Giza Plateau pyramids. So that always fascinated me, because that's where you start to see them realizing that there's a tension between the limitation of the stone, the materials and their building techniques, and nature.
Yes.
So they achieved a balance. And I love to discover the balance between the various aspects of building design. So that fascinated me. If I have not been to Egypt, when I do go, I want to see that pyramid. The other pyramid I've seen all over the place. Of course, I've seen those too. But the red pyramid is incredibly fascinating for that reason. It shows that for the first time, I could actually imagine them modeling this and then using the data collected from the modeling to create the first pyramid, and then building on advances in technology and how they were able to layer the stones to create the Giza pyramids. They were able to layer them and angle them, and they knew the correct angles because they must have been creating models.
Yes.
There's no other way to explain it. So that always fascinated me. And of course, the Egyptian culture is fascinating because they had such an economic surplus. They were able to produce these enormous architectural works, the Karnak temples and some of the other architecture. These things took enormous effort and were very expensive in terms of the capital that was expended at that time. So that would not have been possible outside of being a successful agrarian society because of the flooding of the Nile River, and they had abundant harvests, which allowed them to feed workers that could then build these great works. And you see the time and time again. You see it also in China with the Great Wall, that if they didn't have an economic surplus due to their advanced agricultural techniques, they would never have been able to build these things. People tend to, architects do this too, they tend to think of past societies as being primitive. But the Chinese that built the wall and the Egyptians that built those really advanced buildings, these were not primitive societies at all. These were very advanced societies with advanced techniques that allowed them to produce an economic surplus that gave them the ability to create these beautiful works of architecture. So that's why the Red Pyramid always was a fascination of mine when I got into college, and I realized, what it really represented. So that was fascinating.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating.
The next one is the Parthenon, Athens. And of course, the ancient Greeks were because their philosophies form the basis of Western society. People don't tend to think of them as primitive. They tend to think of them kind of walking around in robes and being very philosophical about things. But if they didn't have an economic surplus due to the way they had organized their society, there would have been issues there too. But they were able to build the Parthenon essentially as a tribute to Athena. And what fascinates me about that is the mathematics that they developed in order to create such a work.
Mm-hmm.
The golden section, golden mean, it's the square root of 5 plus 1 divided by 2 to create that proportion that they felt was reflected in nature as being beautiful. I could argue that with them now. I would love to go back in time and have that discussion. But they recognized this. They knew that the golden mean was not a perfect form, because they also, when they created the Parthenon, they actually curved the surface.
Entablature.
Yes, in order to counteract the effect of the curvature of the human eye.
Yes.
So the fact that they recognized that they needed to compensate in the form for the curvature of the human eye tells me that even then they knew that there was no real perfection in the mathematics that they were using. I mean, it's perfect in the sense that everything adds up and it's all nice and neat, and it's a fun geometry project when you're in high school for them. But the curvature portions of that building always fascinated me, because in a way it's an admission that this is not perfection. That mathematics that's created is not really perfect. It's fascinating. I have my own mathematics that I use proportionally in the houses and in the buildings that I work on, which differs from theirs. But I was absolutely fascinated by kind of reading between the lines, and where perfect was not perfect, we have to fix it. We have to cheat it. It's almost like a cheat to do that. I was fascinated by that in the mathematical proportions. And then the last building that
I've been to the Parthenon. I went there I went there when I studied in Denmark. We went to Greece at one point.
It's fascinating. I have not been. I'm not a big traveler. I have not been a big traveler in my life, and I hope to do that. But one of the things I want to do is I want to lay down on the floor in there, and I want to see the curvature. I want to.
Well, when we were there, you couldn't walk up that far. I think they've redone it, and I think you weren't even. No, I have I'll post it for this. I'll post a photo of me like when I was in college, but I'm pretty much as close as you could get to it, which I'm pretty far away from it. I mean, you weren't allowed to like go kind of explore. But if you go to a lot of these other ruins that are on the islands and other places, you can walk around them and
see, I'm a very tactile architect.
Yes. So I mean, that was like one of the things where you can take out, we took out, the typical college kid thing, right? You go to these guys. I mean, we were very, we could drink, but we were not like partiers, and we didn't have to post it on social media either, so nobody knows what happened. So, but we did take mopeds. This one friend and I, we took a moped out to this little ruin where we could just walk around. And go wherever on it. And I mean, they're all over, right? It's just like, oh, this is a ruin, and it's this ruin that's been there for forever. And then the old, just the hill towns, and I mean, you don't have to go. There are all these little islands that they have. I mean, we wanted to go to Crete, but we couldn't because of the there was a strike. And so they were only going to these 3 little islands that were close to Athens. So we just went to like these 3 islands that were close. And, I mean, they all, like they all have the same things. I mean, and it was, oh gosh, it was like in 1987. And it was around spring break. And one of the most interesting things was this procession that they had all through the hill town at Easter. And I mean, I'll just always remember this because they were carrying the crutch, and it was all in candles. And I have photos of it on slides, of course. But it was, I mean, that was just like a magical moment of just, of being in there. I mean, and that's what I think people should be doing on their spring break. Not that I'm.
Yeah. Yeah, but if I had done that when I was younger, I don't think I would have been able to appreciate it as much as I could appreciate it now. I mean, I'm very, like I said, I'm very tactile. I like to touch the buildings. When I got to Monticello, I walked up to the east gate of Monticello and I threw my arms around one of the columns. And the security guard came up to me and he says, "No." They started following me around once I got inside, because you're not allowed to touch anything.
Yeah.
But and I had my daughters and my wife were with me, and some friends,
Hmm.
and we paid to get the extra tour of the upper levels Monticello, and
Hmm.
we got to go into the dome room. And have you been to Monticello?
No, I was too.
Well, there's a
No, I've
dome
never
room.
gone to Monticello. I went to George Washington's.
Mount Vernon, yeah. There's,
Yes, Mount Vernon.
there's a
Yeah.
room in Monticello that's on the upper floors. That's a dome room. It's a round room, and it's under the dome that you see. When you see
Hmm.
Monticello.
Yeah.
And there's an ocular. There's a round skylight at the top,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and of course that's the room that everybody wants to see. So we're in there with the crowd and everything, and the tour guide is taking everybody down the hall to the next room at that level. And I asked my daughter, I said, hold back, let them go. So they're all gone. And I said, get a picture of me in the dome. I'm in the dome room by myself, channeling Thomas Jefferson, looking up at that Oculus, because he couldn't get glass. There were no glass foundries in the colonies. So he ordered the glass 3 times from Europe, 3 times.
Oh, okay.
The first 2 times it came broken because
Yeah.
the transport broke the glass.
Yeah. Yeah.
Glass. The
Yeah.
last one, which is the one they installed, was only cracked. It wasn't broken. So he used it anyway.
Oh.
It fascinated me to think Jefferson walking around in that room, and I wanted to be in that room by myself. So my daughter stands outside the room, takes a few pictures of me in the room. So then we go back and we rejoin the tour. And as I rejoin the tour guide goes, "Where were you just now?" It's like, well, nowhere. I was just lagging behind a little bit, You didn't go in the other rooms, did you? No.
I know.
So,
Well, I'm like really.
so this is why I said to my wife, because my
I
wife.
do this. I do it all the time, and I'm pretty good at it. So nobody knows. I mean, people are. I was just at the. I mean, now they'll probably be looking for me, but I was just at the
Yeah.
the Salka Institute like last. Gosh.
Beautiful place.
Like Monday or Tuesday. But people are always saying like, oh, I said, oh, I just walk on. I just go in.
Yeah.
I know how to get. I said, I mean, I was sitting in there for probably 5 minutes. There was another architect that was sitting. I'm sure he was an architect, because most architects are there, and that's what they just show up, and they didn't have tours that day, right? Obviously, because it's the social distancing and everything's shut down. But
Right.
so I was just sitting in there, and of course I took a selfie with my mask and my glasses on and stuff, and then probably 10 minutes later, the security, which security will come up, right? Because they can see you on the cameras, but I swear, I think they just figure, you know what, let them sit there for like 10 minutes, or it must take them 10 minutes, because they know that, I think they know, like, oh, they're just architects. They're just architects here
Right.
to like see the space, and and like just let them be there. And he just came up and said, well, do you have your security pass? Are you here for business? And I said no. It's like, okay, then, you can just leave over there. But yeah.
I mean, my wife and I are talking about going to London, and I said to her, well, if we go to London, you're going to have to bring bail money, because I'm just, I said, if we go to the British Museum and I see the Rosetta Stone, I have to touch it. The Rosetta Stone was in the possession of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah.
Before the British seized it. I have to touch the Rosetta Stone. And I know if I reach over the bar to touch that stone, I'm going to jail. I just know. So I told my wife, you're going to have to bring bail money if we go to.
Well, sometimes it's even taking photographs. I mean, now they've kind of restricted, and they say without the flash. But, I can remember I was standing in the Tate Gallery, and there was like, and I went, and I didn't know that we couldn't take photographs of anything. So I like went to take a photograph. And of course I had, my Nikon FG, right? So they can see it, right, a lot easier than just a cell phone now. And this guard from 2 galleries over came running through, no photographs.
Yeah.
So I know they're there, but I just go as far as I can go usually before they say anything
I don't know. I would like to not have to pay bail.
Well, I don't think they'll do it. Probably just, I mean, I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't touch the Rosetta Stone, but
Well, you go, I don't know if you've been to the Guggenheim lately, but the last time I was at the Guggenheim, they wouldn't let anyone take pictures at all of anything.
I was there 2 years ago. I was there when the conference was in New York.
Okay.
I've
been there so many times.
Bunch of photos. Yeah, I took a bunch of photos then.
Well, the last time I was there, one of the docents came up to me and says, "You're not allowed to take photos of any portions of the building. It's a protected, copyrighted work of art." I said, I know that, but there's pictures all over the place. What difference does it make if I take a couple of pictures? You're not allowed to do it. They let people do it, but they strongly recommend that you not do it. They don't threaten you, but there's an implied threat behind it. So,
well, I mean, it's always interesting, right? Because I don't make any money off of my blog, and I know I don't make any, I don't make any money off of, I think that was basically like with the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation, they don't want people to be making money off of anything that.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. And I think that if it's for your own use, now it's like it's practically impossible to, I don't know.
It is. The cameras are everywhere now. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we were at the Metropolitan Museum of Art about 2 months ago, and they no longer tell you not to take pictures. They don't want flash, but you could go up and take pictures of all these beautiful works of art, paintings and sculptures, and they don't stop you anymore. They used to, but they don't anymore. So you're actually encouraged now, because I think they see with social media, they see, so-and-so was at the art museum and they posted this beautiful picture. And most of the pictures that people take with their phones are terrible pictures.
Most of it, exactly. And then, what you can do all the time is they can just reverse Google it, image it, and so they can find out if you are doing anything, right?
Yeah, if you're making money off of it, right?
Yeah, they can immediately. And then you can also find if anybody's using any of your images and getting, like I found. Actually,
I've had to do that a few times. Where you get a contractor who decides that he wants to use one of your projects on his website, and he wasn't even a contractor on the project. I had that happen a few times. This is what happens.
I had somebody that wasn't even a contractor on a project of mine that was sending out postcards, and then he was also advertising in like one of these little magazines, like 2 for 1. I don't know what he was doing 2 for 1 with this, but anyway, he had the images of my project on the thing. So first I asked the contractor, I said, did this person work on the project? Like, do they have any right to like post these images? And then I called them up and said, like, you didn't work on this project and you're advertising my project on there.
Right.
As saying that, they were doing decks and they advertised my project as this deck that, in their image. So then I had to, I basically had to get, it's like they wouldn't stop. And then they said in the phone conversation, they were saying, "Oh, are you talking about the postcards or?" And I'm like, "Postcards? What postcards?" So they were also sending out postcards. And I said, "No, you can't use any of those images. Those are my images." And I said, "And you didn't even work on the project." I said, "You didn't work on the project." I asked the general contractor. So, so I had to send, I had to, write a letter with an attorney to like do it, because I think a lot of times, they're just going to do it until they, he even said on the phone, "You want me to cease and desist?" And I'm like, "Oh, you even know the language." So it's like,
people have no compunction whatsoever about stealing your intellectual property if they can. It's a big problem. It's a big problem in our industry because people don't think of our work product as being copyright protected. They just don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
And that's, everything I do is custom designed for the specific situation. So they can't really use it. They can't reuse it for something else.
Yeah.
I do new buildings. I do new homes from time to time, but very site specific. So unless you had the
Yeah.
same site, you couldn't really reuse what I did. So I don't really spend a lot of time chasing after people like that. I may let them know that I know that they're using my work, and I say,
Uh-huh.
just credit me
Yeah.
and fine, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
because it's too much work, and even if you try to take legal action, there's no guarantee that the courts will recognize the uniqueness of what you've created. It's hard, you know.
Well, I mean, right? It's like I wasn't going to pursue it. Not that I wouldn't at some other point in my life, but you have to prove. I mean, what, right? So basically, in this situation, it's like you're using an image and advertising a project that you didn't work on, right? So how many projects did you get based on that image of mine?
Right.
Then you have to sit there and try to, and it's like, well, am I going to pursue that? It's like, no. I mean, and I've had people like take, good design development drawings of mine and go and build the project and right. And then all of a sudden you're driving somewhere and you're going past the job site and they were like, oh, I thought they said that they couldn't afford to build it. And there
Right.
it is, right? So they've just took your plan. So, so I always have to tell people, I mean, I always have to, I have to tell people when I'm, first meeting with them, and I'm sure you do too, if
Yeah.
even if you get schematic drawings from me, the design is still mine, and it's like, and I would appreciate if you didn't then take it to somebody else to draft it up for you, and then,
I'll have a statement on all of my drawings along the edge that
oh,
explains that. Yeah.
yes, but I mean, sometimes it just needs to be clarified. I think it needs to be
Now, the last building, you asked me for three.
Yes.
The last building is, as I said, was the Empire State Building.
Mm-hmm.
That was designed by William Lamb. It was built during the Great Depression in a time of serious economic upheaval, not unlike the economic upheaval that's happening now.
Yes.
But it was built as a real estate syndication,
Okay.
which, as I began to study economics, is another fascinating aspect of that building. It was built in about 18 months, which is quite a feat when you think about it.
Oh my
Built
gosh.
during the Great Depression. But a real estate syndication is a form of grouping capital in order to accomplish a project by forming a corporation and selling shares in the syndication to people who hold those shares. Then they own a small ownership in the building. So you sell shares to people and then you amass the capital you need in order to execute the construction. The Empire State Building probably would not exist if it were not for the ability of those developers to create a real estate syndication at a time when the Great Depression, the stock market had crashed, the Great Depression is raging. I mean, they didn't know they could build this building and they could have no tenants.
Yeah.
But they built it as a syndication, and I always thought that was a fascinating thing. So you see, the economics creates the ability of the people who want to build. It gives them the ability to build it by the way they approach the economic aspects of this. So that
that's incredible. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah.
This is why I've always been so interested in the economics of design, because you can have a theoretical building and not build it, and that's fine. But if you're going to build that building, you have to understand the economics of design. And as the architect, you need to understand how that factors into the building. And so much of what I learned in school was the antithesis of that. Oh, we don't worry about that. Oh, we're doing this design, we're doing that design. We're not worried about how potentially we might approach this from an economic standpoint. The study of economics is about how you efficiently distribute resourson. So, I mean, that's how you build a building. You say, how do you efficiently use labor and materials to create this building? How could you not consider that in the process of creating the building? To me, you can't separate those two. It's inherent. It's part of the process.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's like, if people aren't getting it in school, I mean, I know at Cal Poly, and I had a discussion with a podcast that I was on last week, but just as far as, at Cal Poly, you'd have 1,000 hours of work experience at Cal Poly Pomona. 1,000 hours of work experience before you
Mhm.
graduated. And that, that way you kind of like saw, I mean, you were learning like, okay, it's like people are going to call up, they're going to be angry about their bill or their, things are going to be over. But that's why I always, and people are saying, well, do a lot of your projects, because they'll see my work and they'll, oh, well, do a lot of your projects go over budget? And I said, well, no, because after schematic design, I said, I typically, sometimes the clients don't even tell me what their budget is, right? But
I don't ask them what their budget is.
yeah,
I tell them what their budget has to be.
yeah. So that's another thing. So I'll say, what do you have in mind? And I'll say, okay, it's like that's not feasible. And if they're like thinking, oh, well, it still is, or somebody told us we could do this, I'm like, you know what? This is what I do. I said, after schematic design, I said, we'll get preliminary estimates. And I said, we'll see where things are. And I said, and then that way we don't waste a lot of time designing a project that you're not going to be able to build because it's going to be too expensive. And I said, so let's do this. And it's oh, I want all this space. It's like, you can't afford that much space. It's like, for every square foot of space, and these spaces are going to be more expensive than this space. A kitchen and bath area is going to be more expensive than a bedroom, or an office area. And I said, these are just, these are, it's not going to change. I mean, you're never going to, right? It's like those spaces are never going to be, you're never going to have.
It's important to do those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you have to do that. And that way, you don't give people these unrealistic expectations about this. And then that's, and that's why we're so, and that's why we're of value in the profession.
Well, I lose projects like this because, people call me for
absolutely.
a project. And I said, send me your survey. Give me a detailed description. If it's not detailed enough, I'll call them. I'll talk with them on the phone. I'll spend a half an hour, I need to get a sense of what they're really trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Level of finish, and I can crunch numbers, and I can tell them and say, based on what you said you wanted to do, it's going to cost you this much. And of course, the contractor told me it was only going to be half that much. It's like, sometimes I lose the project.
Yeah.
Sometimes the project comes back to me after and say, you were right. I should have listened to you. and now I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So I'm firing the other guys and I'm going to start over again. And of course.
And then really looking at what you're, it's like them thinking, oh my gosh, I thought you were so expensive. And then I realized afterwards that you weren't so expensive. What ended up being expensive was going with another person that had, that told me that I was going to be able to do this much. And then we didn't have enough to finish the project or do whatever.
I had that conversation a half an hour ago.
Yeah. I mean, and I mean, it's amazing. And people, if people say like, oh, well, do your projects get built? Do your projects get finished? Like all of I said, what?
Yeah,
I said, I don't have any projects that I said, maybe people decide that they're not. I mean, I did do work for one, I mean, the example that I always use is like a thing that rarely happens is that I had one project in Point Loma and then these people down the street wanted to do one, and he was a landscape architect, and the lots there are pretty small as far as like what the buildable area was, and he was a landscape architect. We had all these plants, but there really wasn't enough room. But he also had a car collection, and there really wasn't room for this car collection either. And he wanted to build, out onto this slope, and then there were problems with the slope, and there was a 180-degree view of the ocean. And, and I'll say, and I said, they decided not to do the project. I said, because it was the structural foundation was, I said, but another thing is that they realized financially it would be better for them to rent out that house and then go buy a house that is like more in the east and the wife said, I don't like waking up in the fog all the time and it's always overcast and depressing. So even though she was, they had a beautiful water view, it's like they decided to move to another house. And I mean, those are the kind of, things where it's like, even they realized it wasn't going to be, economically, it wasn't a good decision for them to put all that money into when that house and that site just really didn't fit their lifestyle anymore.
At least they told you. At least they realized that. I mean, I've walked
Oh yeah,
out,
they
I've
did
walked
after
out of
because you got
projects.
construction estimating.
Yeah, no, I
done,
understand.
right?
But
Yeah.
I've walked
Yeah.
out of projects where, I interview the client and they tell me what they want to do, and I visit because a lot of what I do, a lot of what's here is already built out. So I go
Oh yeah,
visit and
yeah,
they explain what they want to do.
yeah,
And sometimes I just look at them and say, don't build. You don't need the space. You
yeah.
don't need to devote your resources to this. And it's really not, you're not going to end up with a good result when you're done. What you've got already fulfills your needs. It's not sustainable to do that. There's no reason to do that. And then they say, oh, but we want to. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I'm not doing it. So you're going to have to get somebody else. And of course, they
Yeah.
always find somebody else.
Yeah.
But there are just
Oh
some things I just won't
they
do.
always find, they're always going to find somebody else. But the person doesn't. I mean, I interviewed for a job, I don't know, a couple months ago, and it was with kind of this referral agency that has contractors on board to do different things. So they'll refer. So it's like I went and met with them, and we met with the client, and the client, they said that they wanted to do a second floor addition and that they wanted to add all these bedrooms. But the thing is that it was a 1-story house and it already had 3 bedrooms on the first floor. So the client kind of described what he wanted. He wants like 4 bedrooms on the second floor plus an office. And I was like, oh my gosh, you don't even have the footprint to be able to do that, but he had these, his one of his kids were in the local high school, and the high school class decided to come up with this floor plan for their house. So he shows me this floor plan for the house, and I said, okay, right, because I don't really want to say that much. So then on our, I said to the referral people and the contractor, I said, well, what does he want to do with all these bedrooms that he has on the first floor? And I said, does he want to keep these bedrooms? I said, because now it's going to be like a 7-bedroom house that really only has like a 14 or 1,500 square foot, floor plan on the first floor, right? Footprint. And I said, and then he wants a cantilever off the back, and like we're telling him that's too expensive. I mean, like all of these, because these high school students had come up with this cantilever plan. And so all of these things, and so then we're on our way out the door, and then I had asked the person, I said, well, what did he say about these other bedrooms on the first floor? And they said, oh no, he wants to keep the bedrooms on the first floor. And I said, really? And so then I asked him, and I said, are you planning on keeping all these bedrooms on the first floor, so you're gonna have like a 7-bedroom house? And then he said, oh no, we're also going to open up. So they'd already told him that he could not afford what he wanted to do with the second floor, right? Then he says on the way out, we're on the way out, he says that he wanted to totally open up the first floor. And I was like, oh my gosh. So we left, and then he contacted us like less than 24 hours later and said, oh yeah, I've decided to go with these other people. And we're like, and I said to the referral people, I said, I will bet you that they do not know anything about this whole first floor. If they're saying that he can do a certain amount of things for like this much money and this, and so we'll see if he calls back after. I mean, I just sent him an email and said, if you need any help in the future, let me know. So, I mean, sometimes you just can't. Well, it's good that
that's why I was fascinated.
Yeah, it's good that you said the Empire State Building, because I just
By the Empire State Building.
Yes, because typically people don't ever give me a skyscraper. Though yesterday Jeff gave me a skyscraper, not this one, and I was like, wow, that's like Jeff saying that. I said, I'm pretty sure that's the first skyscraper the name is. So that's great that you've got this skyscraper as the first one too. Yeah. So and you said economics. Yes, go ahead.
I mean, growing up in New Jersey, we're always looking across at New York. So, seeing the Empire State Building, I mean, I watched them build the World Trade Center as a child. I watched it go up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But the Empire State Building, as I found out later, was built as a real estate syndication, which really intrigued me that it would not have been possible otherwise. So as an architect and as a designer, as someone who wants to create objects, create things and have them built, I always thought of it as a paradox that they would not teach me that. I had to go and learn that on my own. It was not
Because I've
part
never
of
heard it. I've never heard that before. I've never heard that before. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting. They do that for a lot of speculative development out here for custom homes.
Mhm.
They'll do that where a lot of people will go in and, you know, it's like, I don't even know who the investors are, right? Because I'm just doing it for these small family development
Right.
companies. But so what do you like about being an architect?
I just love everything about it. I became an architect because I wanted to help people to achieve things, to achieve their goals.
Mhm.
And people need well-designed shelter. And it's not so easy. I mean, a lot of people think of home design and building design as being relatively simple. You draw a few lines and then the contractor does everything. There is so much that goes into the planning of even a simple home now.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
very complex. The codes have gotten complex.
Hmm.
Sustainability is a real issue that needs to be addressed and
Yeah.
should be addressed in every project, from the smallest project to the largest.
Mhm.
It should be a part of everything. And the economics of that is important. You need to be able to talk to people about the economics of what it is they're asking you to design
Mhm.
so that you can bring them along through the process.
Mhm.
No one's going to hand you tons of money, or I shouldn't say this. There are clients that will do this, hand you tons of money and then say, all right, let me know what you come up with. You know,
Mhm.
that's really not the way things work. So
Yeah.
you need to be able to speak that language. And
And I
again,
found even people, I mean, everybody has a budget. Even if a person has billions, I mean, they still have a budget. And a lot of times their budget is a lot less than what you would think that you would have from somebody that, you know, they're much
it
more,
depends
uh,
on their attitude. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I've had very wealthy clients and we've done successful projects, but they want these things done on tight budgets.
Hmm.
That's the way they are. It reflects their personality. There
Yes.
aren't a lot of clients that are ready to just write blank checks.
Hmm.
You know, it's just not in their nature. It's not anyone's nature,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to address that. I've also had clients that were on very tight budgets,
Hmm.
and because I tracked the economics of the project from the very first phone call, we actually had a successful project instead of a major disaster where it went over budget by 100,000 on the budget was double what they were told. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen to my clients. I won't let it happen to them.
Yeah.
And if they don't want the honest answers, then they're going to either go hire somebody else, or they're not dealing with me.
Hmm.
I I I, I do not want to take money. I tell you this all the time. I will not take money from you unless you understand that this is what you're asking me to do and this is how much it's going to cost. There's not going to be some magic process by which you get it for half of what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be what I tell you, or
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
I won't take money from you
Hmm.
until you say, yes, I understand. That's what I'm getting myself into. So
Yeah.
I love being an architect because I get to help people to achieve their goals. I listen to what they need. I know how to put buildings together. They know what they want. They tell me my design philosophy is not based on a specific style. Um, I can speak in colonial just as well as I can speak in modern. And I often, uh, say to people, I say, you tell me you want a modern home. Modernism is 100 years old.
Yeah.
What do you mean by modern? So there's all kinds of different interpretations of what modern is.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I design in all different styles and such, but I focus mainly on the economics of design, the integration of systems, sustainability issues. I look at the life cycle costing when I work with people. You hire me, you're getting sustainable features whether you want them or not. I put them in there even if people don't ask for them because it just makes sense. I mean, we have to do these things.
Yeah.
And it makes economic sense for them. I
Yes.
may not have the conversation with them, but I mean, I got a call from a client a couple of months ago. Finished the project in the fall, and she calls me in February, and she goes, "What did you do with my house?" I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "We doubled the size of the house, and my electric bill is half what it was before."
Right.
And I said, "Well, that's because of the way it was designed."
Yeah.
And she goes,
Yeah.
how did you do that?
Yeah. I know. Well, especially when you've got like heating and cooling and I mean like great different. I mean, we have a pretty, moderate climate out here, but I mean still there's a great difference in our existing house has no insulation at all. So it's like, but because of the codes, we have to do, heavy duty insulation in the
Right.
addition that we're doing right now.
Right.
So, so
Which is going to cause you other problems. Yeah.
which which does. We actually these French doors that I have that are on the east side of the house, it's like we were the window and door person was asking me like, oh, do you want any film on it so that it could be higher? I said, well, and I talked to my Title 24 person the second time. I've got two Title 24 people on my project. But he was saying like, don't put it on the east side because if your house is cold in the morning, you're not going to be able to get that sun in the east if you have that additional film where, if it was on the west side, it would be a different thing. And I mean, but these are just all, things that, that you need to know in order to make, the house more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, I do sun studies on every project, whether the client asks for it or not.
Oh, exactly.
Because we need to know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, because sometimes I think some of the things too is that they're sometimes they want to even though they say they want it light or bright, and I said, well, why don't you take the drapes off the windows, things like that. It's like,
So you're like me. So
yeah,
you're gonna go in, like, I don't care what these people think of me. It's like, what's with these drapes?
it's like, why don't you take the drapes off the windows? Because then I said, because, and then, it's like, you don't want to, if you're talking about light and bright, I said, then you don't want to recreate like this darkness in the new project, right? And it's like, a lot of times they'll want to go with the familiar with what they already have in their house instead of you're like, okay, you don't, it's like, you don't need to, like let's try to do it a different way, or let's try to use like brighter, lighter materials, brighter materials to like bring it in.
And then
That's not actual physical space that you have to add to the house. It's rearranging your existing space or adding windows, and then that's saving them for their budget. So yeah,
I do that.
right. It's making. I mean, a lot of times it's making less work for us because then we're not adding a huge house, or it's not going to be the bigger project, or but it's what they need and not what they think they need.
Right. And they're not wasting material resources, and they're not clogging a landfill, and they're not creating something that is going to use a lot of energy needlessly. So that's all part of what we do. If I end up with a lesser project, then it's fine. I mean, like I said before, I go to look at new projects, and sometimes I say, don't build, you don't need it. So we'll take this wall out, we'll add some windows here, and everything you told me you wanted to accomplish will be accomplished. And you just spent a quarter or less of what it is that you told me that you were prepared to spend. And they look at you straight because they go to contractors. Sometimes they go to contractors first. And of course, they assume that the contractor understands energy efficiency, sun, windows, and contractors can develop an understanding of those things, but it's really not for them. They're about putting buildings together. They're not about deciding on all of these facets of how the object works. And but people don't understand. Many people don't understand that. Fortunately for me, I have a lot of clients that are very aware of that architecture important for the project, and they call me before they even talk to a contractor. I get that a lot, and I never used to get that, but my reputation is such that people know that they can trust me when I tell them what it's going to cost, that it's actually going to cost what I tell them. It's not, I'm not undervaluing it in order to get the project.
Yeah.
I'll lose the project before I'll tell somebody that their budget is half of what it really needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why I wanted to become an architect. I wanted to help people to achieve their goals in terms of architecture. And sometimes that's telling them that don't do it.
So what would you like to say about the future of architecture?
I I mean, I'm optimistic for the future. I'm I'm a little
I mean, even the
disheartened.
future beyond our present situation, future,
Yeah,
the
yeah, no, the future
we,
beyond the pandemic.
yeah,
Yes, I'm optimistic we'll survive the pandemic.
yes, yes, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, for the last few decades, we've been in a kind of a design free for all. It's kind of it can with parametricism, and you've got the remnants of postmodernism, and then you've got the remnants of modernism, and it's a big
Mm-hmm,
jumble of
mm-hmm,
all kinds of things, and there's really no discipline in the design anymore. There's no um, there's no emerging style that's going to lead us into the future. And what we've lost, because that's happening, we've lost a lot of the underlying meaning behind architecture as an art.
mm-hmm.
It's nowadays it's all about the form. It's not about the meaning. Something's going on upstairs.
Oh, what do your things fell down? Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's what
yeah.
it is. Okay. My background. There we
Oh,
go.
there we go. Okay,
That happened one other time.
okay.
But because I have this little section of my office that I cordon off to do these interviews
Oh,
because
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. Yeah,
so I
yeah,
can control with the background, except when it falls down. But
yeah.
that's great. Um, we're in a kind of a free for all design wise, which, like I said before, my design philosophy is not style based,
Mm-hmm.
but it is meaning based. There's meaning behind what I do as I create these designs. Now, I may create a colonial design for a client that has an affinity for colonial, but there will be meaning behind that design. Um, if there's a modern design, there'll be meaning behind that. I think we've lost that. I, I I don't see a lot of that, and I don't hear architects talking about meaning any longer. It's about technology. It's about AI. They're talking a lot about AI. It's like I get it. But I used to have these discussions and these debates with the engineering students at Carnegie Mellon. They used to tell us that 10 years from now you're going to be out of business because we're going to design a computer system that's going to replace you. And I said, well, the engineers are telling us this. I think you got it backwards. I mean, we're the creative people.
Yeah.
You're going to design a computer that's going to put architects out of business. I think you're going to end up putting yourself out of business.
Yes.
Because that's what you're going to do. Because engineering is not really the creative side of what
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's more about,
you-
it's more about formulas and making things and then just and sizing things, which can be done with anything. I mean, the technology, as far as the expression of the structure, which is typically a collaboration between the architect and the engineer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of architects are just skin jockeys. I mean, they're just out there. They're consulted on the skin, the exterior of the building. The rest of it is a standard format or a standard a program that's set up by a developer based on marketing research. So the developer doesn't want the architect's input on the inside. They already know the level of finish they're going to put in. They already know the program of the building they're creating, if it's depending on what type of a building it is.
Mm-hmm.
And all they want is the architect to help them pick the skin and the color. I mean, I call those types of architects skin jockeys. They do. Now, of course, they don't.
The plastic surgeons of the architecture field.
It's not even plastic surgery because even a plastic surgeon is meaning behind what the plastic surgeon is doing. Some of the stuff that I see being done, it's just why? Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I mean, there's a lot of it spills over into the whole global warming and climate change. Why are we wasting resources? Why are we wasting resources doing these incredibly expensive buildings to create sculpture? And at the same time, we're preaching to people say, don't do this, don't do that, don't drive your car because you're hurting the planet. I mean, what hurts the planet more than wasting enormous economic resources?
Yeah, I'm on this thing right now where I'm really angry about all these either real or fake stone veneers where they're just putting stone veneer everywhere. Like, look at this. Oh, we'll put a stone veneer on it. And you can tell, I'm like, what? I know that an architect wasn't involved with that, or if an architect was involved, why would they say, like, let's use a stone veneer? I mean, it's an incredible waste of resources. It, you know, it adds a tremendous amount of uh, the, you know, money to the project. Yeah. And it's like, why, what is it doing on here besides the fact that somebody said, oh, I want stone veneer at the base of the building because everybody else is putting stone veneer. I mean, it just, it drives, I don't know, it just drives me crazy. And you've got stone veneer that's like, right, a patch of it that's like it's like 30 feet up the side of the building. So there's no meaning even behind stone. Like, you would never put a stone veneer that far away, or wood-sided skyscrapers or high rises. I mean, why would you put a exterior wood siding on a skyscraper? I mean, not even a skyscraper, like a you know, a building. I mean, maybe if you have these timber things, but they just seem to me to be like more of, you know, they're materials that were used for a certain reason, right? And then, you know, the reason why we use other materials for that is because of, you know, of not only, you know, there are more reasons of why, you know, economic, right? Why would we do a tower out of wood siding? I mean, there's no.
You can do that provided there's a specific meaning or reasoning behind what you're doing. To me, the most successful project.
And if it was a wood, right? We're getting these higher timber structures. If you can clad in a wood, if you can clad in a wood, and then it's like you're getting wood next to wood, that's fine. But like putting, you know, adding wood, which isn't really wood typically, it would be like a composite or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, finding the balance between the aesthetic expression and the function to make sure that the building functions. All buildings have to function. And then the economics. When you have a balance between those three aspects, that's all about what I do. I try to find that balance, and meaning is created, and meaning lives in that balance. And that seems to be missing. I mean, maybe I'm not getting it, but I look at some of what's being created, and I see, you know, it's like this is influenced by HGTV. This is influenced by someone trying to copy a building in Europe done by a famous architect, but they're not copying it properly. They're interpreting it wrong, messing it up. And then you have some of these buildings which are designed by the architects that just seem so hollow and shallow in their form. You know, far be it for me to criticize, you know, the high stylists of our profession, but the meaning is more important. Is more important. Buildings used to have meaning, and I don't think they do any longer, and that's disappointing. So my hope for the future is that I hope to see a return of meaning to architecture.
Okay.
Hopefully.
No, I mean, I think that's good, and that is what we're taught in school, and that is something that we can try to convey to people about, you know, about why, you know, about why we'll design something a certain way, you know, especially, I mean, if for, you know, especially when it's personal and, you know, it is for their home, and you know, you are designing for a specific person, you know, a couple, a family, you know, I mean, the place where they're going to live every day, where, you know, where they might be in, you know, stuck with 3 other members of their family. Where I'm telling my daughter, like, not to, like, please don't run the washer and dryer when I'm trying to do.
Yes.
So, that's why I was running like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But to me, a building design is like poetry. It's not just the words, you know, it's the meaning behind the words. And we seem to have lost the poetry that used to be in architecture. And I'm hoping that poetry will return. It seems like, I look at some buildings, I say that there's no poetry there. They've taken the poetry and they've turned it into a limerick. And that's no way to do things, you know, but it's, I mean, there's so many aspects of how a building gets built. And there are so many people that have to kind of sign on to the overall poetic meaning behind what you're trying to do. It's easy to get things just derailed. It's like you design a building, you put certain materials in for meeting, and then you find out the developer just stripped all of your materials and substituted other materials and didn't consult you. And now you have a train wreck on your hands. The developer doesn't care because he doesn't understand. And it's like, okay, I always say to my colleagues, I say, oh God, another one I can't put on my website. Because, the original design was beautiful and poetic and had significant meaning. And now I can't use it because they've stripped out the meaning.
I know. And then people will say like, oh, well, architects just design for their website. It's like, no, it's not that we're just designing for our website. It's that when we see a project and we have a certain idea and then something is done without consulting us and then it just creates, problems on top of problems, and so then, it's like,
I explained that to my
yeah. And then, like, no, I just didn't, this wasn't just this gestural, a sweep of my hand of why I said that it should be that way. There were all
not
of
arbitrary
reasons. Yeah, there were all of it wasn't arbitrary. There were all these reasons why I did it. And then you changing this, like, started this other process. And I don't know. The other thing is the front door. It's like, I always like laugh. I'm like, you know what? We just have to, some things I guess we're just going to have to use with Photoshop because
yes, I do that.
Because, and one of my friends, when I was like saying something about the front door, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's the deal with the front door? It's like, can we just pick a nice front door? Like, it doesn't have to be an expensive front door. I said, just go with maybe a traditional wood front door. And then all of a sudden you like see this front door and you're like, oh my gosh, like what? And I used to say like, okay, like, but I
used to work with a kitchen designer who used to say, this profession would be great if it wasn't for the client.
And I mean, I don't want to think that, or when they're bringing in interior designers in at the like halfway, right? All of a sudden there's, it's like you've done the project and maybe they didn't understand it before the walls were up and the windows were in, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, now we can bring in somebody else to do all these other things. And I said, well, I already, when I'm designing, I'm thinking about the interiors. I'm thinking about like what, and it's like, you have good taste. Like, why are you bringing in this other person that, that is going to now like, I said, I mean, I can provide all those services for you. I already have thought about that. I've drawn it, and it's like we do more than just the exterior envelope. And I think that people, especially when we're designing houses. I mean, there isn't any architect that I know that designs houses that can't do the interiors of the house. I mean, of course we can pick all the material and finishes, the tile work. I mean, typically I'll do that. And then, all of a sudden they have, somebody like, oh, this person said they're going to help me with this and they're going to help me with this. And it's like, oh. But, it's like, yeah, I said, well, we can all work together on that if you want to bring somebody in to do this. I mean, I don't need to do a million cabinet details for all these kitchen, places that already have.
I work with designers all the time. I work with interior decorators from time to time. Some are more aware than others. A lot of interior decorators, unfortunately, are not professionally trained.
Yes.
And they I had a colleague of mine said they don't
know. Decorators versus the designers, right?
Well, to me, I'll tell you what the difference is. Okay, an interior designer does drawings. Okay, a decorator doesn't do drawings. They'll just come in and a decorator will come in with their cell phone, search Google for images, and fire images off to the contractor. I want you to do it this way, and I want you to do it. I said, that's not design. That's not design.
Yeah.
You're not going to end up with a good result if you keep doing it that way. But this is the way they do it because this is the way they see it happening on HGTV.
Mm-hmm.
And because somebody told them that their house was nicely designed and they did it themselves, they now think that they can be an interior
Yeah.
decorator.
Yeah.
Or,
And I mean,
and
it's
the
like the
problem
layout
comes
of
through
the
science.
tile and how things are, it's like I've gone over, this stuff, but I mean, if the person doesn't want, if the person that you're working with doesn't want to, doesn't want to listen or doesn't want to learn from you about the, it's like I did a project recently and, it's like, okay, we got halfway there and I said, okay, it's like things have to be lined up. Like this tile starts here. This has to be here. The plan, I said, these are all these little details that have to go in when you're, when you are laying out the thing. I said, which is the reason why I said that I wanted to do a drawing for it. I said, and the contractor was like, oh, we don't need a drawing for it.
Right.
Okay, but this is what happens when you don't do a drawing
Right.
for it. I said, this stuff doesn't get,
You know what I do?
if you're not talking to the person and being there right there on the job site, talking about it and saying, okay, this is how I want this laid out, which
I make
there
them
are
do the
plenty of
drawing.
people that can, pardon me? You
I
still
make them
drawing?
do the drawing. I call it, I said, I want a shop drawing on the tile work.
Yeah.
I want you to give me a floor plan of the tile layout on the floor that you're going to do.
Mhm.
Because unless I do that, they aren't paying attention. I can give them a drawing and they won't follow it. But if I make them do the drawing, then they start to realize, oh, wow, this detail matters. Oh, the alignment of this matters. Oh, I have to start here. I can't start over there.
Yeah.
You know? It makes them, it makes the craftsman who ultimately has the
But
power of success.
do you have craftsmen that will draw?
Listen, I ask for the drawings. I don't always get them.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
always get them. But when I
Yeah.
ask for them and I don't get them, then the conversation starts.
Okay.
Why do you want that? Why do you want that? I want that because did you notice that if the tile isn't done in the right way, if it doesn't start in the right place, you're gonna have a problem over here?
Yeah.
Oh, think about that. I said, well, that's why I want the drawing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've had situations where sometimes the contractors and the clients learn, the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
They ask for the
Yeah.
drawing, it's in emails over and over again. There's a huge problem on the project. It's a financial issue,
Mhm.
because things have been installed and now they have to be uninstalled and reinstalled. And as I pull out those emails, I said, look, I asked for this information. You told me that I wasn't going to get it because it's going to cost you $5 to have the drawing done, or whatever it is, $500. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
I said, but now we have a huge problem.
Yeah.
And it's all because you didn't listen when I said we needed this, and I even told you why we needed it. I tell
And
my
I think
clients,
it's interesting because literally this last time it was because all of the things that the person at the end, and it was because the client I wasn't working with the client, I was working with an owner's rep, but pretty much all of the things that I had brought up or that I didn't, that brought up before that weren't paid attention to were the things that she said at the end. Oh, I wouldn't have done it that way again. I wouldn't have done it. And literally I just said well, yeah, I said that I'm not to say that I told you so, but
Right.
I said, well, that's why I brought up these certain things, because I mean, let's face it. I mean, we're further along in years, I guess we can say that we have
speak for yourself.
Yeah, I know. I'll admit, I'm 55. I've been doing, it's for probably until 10 years ago or whatever. People, I mean, most of the time they would be like, "Oh, do you have enough experience to do this?" And
Yeah,
I'm
right.
yeah,
Right.
I've been working I've been working for an architect since I was 19. And I said, yeah, I have experience. My family was, both sides of the family were, in certain aspects of the construction industry. So it's I've been around it a long time. And I said, it's I've worked for different architects. I've been practicing on my own for 25 years. It's I can,
Well, you have
do
a portfolio.
this. Yeah.
You have successful projects. You have, not every project is successful. I only show my
Oh, no.
potential clients the successful project.
Oh, well, yeah,
I mean,
no, exactly. Yeah, I mean, exactly. You know how it is, Bill. You'll look at, I mean, I'll looking at all these drawings because part of it is an office space here. So I'm looking through all these drawings that I have, and it's weird. I'm some of these projects, I said, I do not remember. I said, I mean, I drew it. I know that those those are my lines.
Right.
That's my lettering because I still hand draft. And I said, but I I said, I cannot remember where this, I said, obviously it wasn't a built project, or I would have like known, the people either decided not to do it, or it was like some other project, and it's from years ago. I said, but literally, I said, sometimes I just can't remember the project. And I said, it's unbelievable to me that like I would go through a process. Obviously it wasn't a big project. I would have remembered like all of the big projects, but some of the small ones, it's just like I'm looking at them and I'm just like, I don't know. I don't even recognize the address of the project. So it's totally bizarre.
I remember
totally
every one of my
bizarre.
projects.
Yeah. Oh no, and I was looking, I had a set of drawings for some apartments or condos that were done in Carlsbad, where I was working at another firm, and I looked at it and I'm like, I know that I worked on this project, and there's my line. But I was like 19, 20 years old. I can't, I can't. I said, I don't remember ever working. I said, or if I did, I had no idea it was in Carlsbad. I said, now I'm going to go, I Googled it to see if it had, it had been built and it's still there, but the project was done, it was done in the 80s. It's so.
You say, like, you said 80s like it's a bad thing.
I just, no, I just meant like, nowadays, right? A lot of people that, right, my daughter was born in 94, so she's 25, right? So it's like, it was, it was before they were born, or like, you'll meet somebody that's 35 or whatever, and you're like, oh, you're.
Well, you said you started working at 19, which is interesting. I started working in an architect's office at 19 also. I worked in an office the entire time that I was in school.
Yeah.
And seeing the practical application of design and learning the theoretical application of design was terrifying. Because there was such a disconnect. I could not believe the disconnect. So I was driven to take economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, the mathematics of optimizing systems, statistics, things like that. I was driven to do that because I couldn't imagine not understanding these things and taking money from people to design buildings. It just so it drove me from early on. But I started at 19, and after my first year of school, and I worked every summer after that. And then while I was going to Pratt, I had all of my classes compressed into 3 days so that I could work the other 3 days.
Yes.
So I was taking a full load of classes, including design studio, and working 3 days a week, and going to school the other 3 days. Yeah. And I did that for 3.5 years. And when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I had already knocked almost 2 years off my internship.
Yeah.
Because I had so much time in the office. So I was licensed rather quickly, which to me was great because that's all I ever wanted to be. As soon as I was able to, I hung my shingle out. I started at, I was 27 when I.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then I started at 29. Yeah. So let's just kind of wrap it up with kind of some things that you did a blog about different things that we can do during COVID. I saw with the doorknobs, I think was number one. But if you could kind of if you could kind of go, because you're in New Jersey, so you it was, I'm sure that you felt it. You felt the virus there.
Oh, sure. So, well, my point in writing that, and I don't do a lot of blogging for myself. I'm a co-chairman of the Public Awareness Committee for AIA New Jersey. So a lot of the blogging that I do is really more for the AIA and the state membership. And that the original idea behind that blog post was for other architectural firms to adapt it to their own particular circumstances, send it out to their clients. The point is to kind of, teach them a little bit. Entertain them and the kids, during the pandemic while they're shut in. But at the same time, teach them a little bit about what architects actually think about when they design spaces and design buildings for them. It's like, the door, I want to make them aware of the doorknobs so that they would remember to go back and clean them all. So if I make you count them,
Yes.
then you're
Yes.
gonna be aware of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the point of contact with the building. As architects, people don't go, people don't fly up in the air and hug dormers,
Yeah.
except for me, but they come in contact with the front door. They touch the door handles. I mean, that's where
Yes.
they make contact. They don't go touching all the walls. So I wanted to make them aware of that. And then a couple of other things, building a couch cushion fort, about searching for materials within the house, and
Uh-huh.
the sensory experience of being in interior spaces and what architects do as we do. That was really the purpose of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It got a lot of good feedback. I mean, a lot of people really thought it was amusing as well as informative.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to post it in my blog.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there any other things that maybe people can do to their spaces? This one's going to be, I'm going to write also about the importance of having a good bed.
Yeah.
When anybody's going through, I know that when a few years ago, when I after my husband had his stroke, I just, I was spending a lot of time overnight in the hospital, and I just I loved being able to go home after, a few days, like sleeping in the hospital for any of these times, and just being able to sleep in a bed that had, so it's like I bought new bed linens. It was all coordinated. I have like 10 pillows on my bed now. but it just being kind of like my bedroom being my sanctuary and my quiet place, even though I still have work stuff in there, but it just being like a very relaxing place in order to to really like wind down and be like a refuge as far as the bedroom is. And
rest is meant to be restorative, and in order to be restored, you have to allow yourself to be comfortable, and that is a big part of that. Especially, when you're young, it's not such a big deal. You can sleep on the floor and you're fine. But when you're older, if you don't have the right bed and the right mattress firmness, you're not going to be comfortable. You're not going to get the restorative sleep that you need in order to fully function at your greatest capacity the following day.
yes.
And every once in a while, we have a night that we don't sleep well, too much caffeine, too much whatever it is, and you drag in the whole next day.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that when I was younger with the kids, it's like I was staying, it's like I was I was staying up to 2:00 in the morning. I'll still do that now. I will stay up until, if I don't get the work done, in the other day, I will be like staying up late. But,
you like the night owl?
Yes, I am. I am a total night owl.
I'm the opposite.
No, most men that I know do get up early in the morning.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, if I've got project deadlines, I come home at 5:00. We have dinner, and I go to bed.
Yes.
And I get up.
And then you get up
11
super
p.m.
early.
or midnight. And then I work through the night.
Yeah.
And I am much, much more productive doing that than I am trying to overtire myself. I work late into the evening.
But you wake up early. I'll wake up a little bit later and then work.
Well, everybody's different.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that that's important. And then just as far as we've always had dinner together, as a family, and then even, and I just think that's always been important. And even, when my husband was coming home at 7:00 at night, some people were saying well, my husband comes home late at night, so I don't know. I said, you know what? We always had dinner. I said, I would say okay, you have to be home by, we're only going to wait until 7. And then we would eat at 7, even if he had a deadline or something that was later, but we would still always eat as a family. And, my kids are they're amazed at how many people they know that don't eat dinner as a family. And that was kind of when I've been looking at the different, social media posts and things about people saying oh yeah, we're home to eat at dinner, because they're, a lot of people's lives, they're so busy, getting the kids from place to place. And, it's I think that probably people are, they're so physically and emotionally exhausted, they don't have time to, to put a good meal on the table. And, and kind of, so we're kind of, doing these traditions of our, so that's like one of the things that I see a lot on the posts, like, oh, we're eating dinner as a family, where they were eating dinner as a family. And there's really something to be said for, like, setting the table, sitting down, there's no social media typically when I've always said, like, there's no social media at the table when we eat dinner, and then even if I mean, the kids that are older that that are out of the house and then come home, I mean, it's nice to eat dinner with them, but if they do want to eat separately, it's like it's like, I'm not totally rigorous. Some people are like, oh my gosh, you're a horrible person or something because you want to. I said, no, I don't make them. So the thing is that they want to sit down. I mean, this is like a tradition that we have in our family to, like, always sit down at the table.
Right. You don't want to be a dinner dictator.
Yeah, I don't want to be a dinner dictator. Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. But I mean, that's something that I grew up with, even as, like, when we were older and, would go back to that, we would always sit down and eat dinner, at the dining table. So it's like the dining table, the dining room is always, it's not about, sitting on the couch in front of the television. It should be about, not that you have to be together all the time, but it's those kind of traditions, family traditions, and that really, I mean, in some of the, when people talk about what is the only thing that they've been able to find that is inherent in having connected relationships and successful children and parenting is sitting at the dining table and eating dinner every night. That's the only thing that's the only thing that they've been able to connect with all of these different successful relationships and successful parenting and successful children parent relationships. So I don't know.
My wife and I talked a lot about this when my girls were younger. I mean, when we were babies. We said, well, we want to have regular family mealtime. I mean, and this is part of one of the nice things about having your own firm, because you kind of can set your own schedule.
Yeah.
When my daughters are growing up, their entire educational lives before they left to go to college, we ate breakfast together every day, and we had dinner together almost every day. Sometimes I had meetings and interfere.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I could come home for dinner and then go to the meetings after.
Yeah.
So we made a point of doing that as we raised them over their entire lives. And I think it made a difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think it definitely does. Yeah. Yeah. So anything else that you'd like to say?
I think that it's great what you're doing. I love your blog.
Thank you.
I think that you're bringing to light a lot of important issues. And I keep going, keep doing it. I keep trying to encourage all of my colleagues, wherever they may be. And now, because of social media and my involvement with the public awareness, I now have friends like you all over the country.
I know.
And we've actually met. We met.
I know,
We've actually met. I've actually met a lot of people.
I know.
For the first
that
time.
was great. And then I don't know. I've been like slower. I was slower with, oh gosh, I was just like slower in the fall. And now I'm going to be publishing, like, I'm publishing the one with Jeff today, and then I'll publish yours in a couple days, and then another one for those. Yeah. So just to try to, get it out there and get everybody's, I mean, I think being positive and being, talking to people that have been through, recessions before and, other life experience before, I think is going to be, I think it's a good thing to have out there for people to listen.
It is, and it helps to educate and help the younger architects that are coming up behind us. And I mean, I thought it was hard when we went through it. Now they're coming up behind us, so I try to reach out and mentor as many of them as I can. My proverbial electronic door is always open for questions, and I'm happy to give you my 2 cents. I'm not always right, but I'll give you my opinion. But we also need to do this blogging, this communication. It connects us with our clients, and it helps to educate the public. And we
Yeah.
need to educate the public, because even now they still don't really understand how we fit in. I said before that I've been very fortunate. I have a lot of clients that understand why they need me.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I have people call me and I said, you know what, I can't help you because you don't understand why you need me. So when you understand why you need me, call me back. And they always laugh because they
That's
think
great. No,
that's
that's
funny.
great.
You know?
No, it's
But it's
great.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I, through the social media, through the blogging, and through these new media forms of communication, we
Mhm.
can reach the public directly like never before. I mean, it
Mhm.
used to be with old media, you had to get your name published in an article. And, and I love journalists. Journalists are wonderful. I talk with them all the time. But sometimes you tell them something, and when they go to print it, it's completely the opposite of what you were saying.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's like a game of
Yeah.
telephone. And I don't
Yeah.
blame them. There's a lot of things that they have to do, and there's editorial control and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But being able to take our message as architects,
Mhm.
through blogs like yours and the other blogs that are out there, that's very powerful. So
Mhm.
we can reach people and entertain people and explain to them what it is that we do. I
Mhm.
was talking to somebody yesterday, and I said, we have you turn on the TV every night, and there's cop shows and there's lawyer shows and there's doctor shows. Okay, there's no architect shows. And HGTV doesn't count because they don't want
Yeah.
architects on there. They don't want architects.
I know
But
that's kind of funny. I don't understand why they don't. I don't understand.
because I probably shouldn't say it. You know what? I'm not going to say.
Okay, okay, okay.
You and I will have a conversation in a day or so,
Okay.
and I'll tell you what I was going to say.
Okay, all right.
Because
Okay.
I know the reason why.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So I guess just keep doing. I'm a great admirer of yours. I think
Oh,
this is
thank
terrific.
you.
And
Thanks.
please keep going. And
Okay.
every once in a while, I'm happy to come back on and talk about other stuff.
Okay. Okay. No, I will. I will. Yeah. There's like so many people that I said that I was going to, and then like I haven't. And so I'm like, okay, let's try to get the people that I had kind of promised before. Like Rosa Chang. She's supposed to do, but she's like so busy all the time that I.
Yeah. Well, I'm a great admirer of her, and she's taken this up like a crusade,
Mhm.
to push equity into the profession.
Yeah.
And it needs somebody to push it in because it just doesn't happen on its own.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I completely support everything that
Yeah.
Rosa
Yeah.
is doing and has been doing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just, she's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks. I'm gonna just hit the stop for the record, and then we can talk after.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.